Hey folks, and welcome to another video from A Plain Truth for You, and well-heeled too. Well, dome is home, kingdom, wisdom, shalom. The dome is our home, flat earth. So why are all the ancient cathedral buildings, of which we're learning were the Tartarian Empire, why were they all built with domes? See, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these buildings with bronze and copper roofing. What is with the bronze and copper roofing? Here you see the green. What happens when bronze and copper? It's magnetized. It's electronic, as we're going to get into here in a minute. But it wasn't just of some of the cultures. The Russian Orthodox, they had what they called onion domes. You can see right here. I mean, the same shapes. Why did they have all these onion domes? What were the domes about? We know that there's likelihood there's Wi-Fi coming up through the tops here, but what is going on with all the domes? So looking at domes, or dumi, a dome for Latin domus is an architectural element, resembles the hollow upper half of a sphere. Can you say flat earth? And these periods they had at Mesopotamia, Hellenistic, Roman, Chinese, Persians, ancient world, indigenous, Byzantine, Islamic, Middle Ages, early modern. They all use the dome. Isn't that magnificent? How did they build that stuff, folks? The English word for dome ultimately derives from the ancient Greek and Latin domus, or house, which up through the Renaissance labored a regular house such as house of God. So we get through a little further and we realize that these domes were also recreated by a wonderful man named Buckminster Fuller, who recreated the dome and used it as an energy field that they used the Houston Astrodome, the Olympics up in Montreal, and they all used his domes because it was super energy efficient. It didn't cut corners, and it was superior to most buildings in the previous. But all he was doing was, excuse me, using the ancients' knowledge and using geometric math, sacred geometry, to figure out the triangles in a polyhedron pattern. But we'd seen this used in times before as well. And the beehive dome also is called a corbelled dome, or a false dome. This is where they hid the magnetrons. These are different from a true dome in that they consist of purely horizontal layers. As the layers get higher, each is slightly cantilevered, corbelled towards the center until meeting at the top.
And many of you probably already know the answer has to do with electricity. When a magnetic field moves through copper and many other metals, it causes electrons to reorganize themselves and flow in a circular pattern perpendicular to the oncoming magnetic field. There's no attraction or repulsion, just resistance to change. One way that we can prove this resistance is due to the flow of electricity is by replacing the copper plates with a copper coil. This coil of wire is not connected at the ends, and so it does not form a complete electrical circuit. If we tried to make electrons flow around this coil, they would have nowhere to go, and we can tell this is the case because when I drop a magnet through the center, there is no resistance. When I do connect the two ends of the copper wire, now the magnet pauses as soon as it reaches the coil, and it takes a moment to make it all the way through. Electrons can now make a complete orbit around the coil in response to the oncoming magnetic field, and so the magnet slows down as its momentum is converted into electrical current. If I once again disconnect the coil and bridge the circuit with an LED, we can see a better indication of the electricity. The LED is very efficient, so powering it doesn't slow down the magnet quite as much as when the circuit was closed directly. This is a simplified model of how the majority of the world's electricity is generated. There are many different types of power plants, but most of them are just trying to figure out different ways to more efficiently move magnets through coils of wire.
So that demonstration was known as Lenz's law and Faraday, and here's electromagnetism. And you see the positive and negative charges create a feedback loop, pushes energy in, creates energy out. And you can see that this Lenz's law explains the direction of many effects of electromagnetism. The ether in the sky is electromagnetic. That's why this ocean is salt. So that's what creates the electrical charge, is the electromagnetic energy between the North Pole and the Antarctic Circle. The North Pole is negative, it's attraction. The Arctic Circle is positive, pushing out. And the electrolysis, the hydroelectrolysis of the water of the ocean, the salt, is what creates the energy that Tesla and many before them used to create perpetual free energy. Lenz's law explains the direction of many effects of electromagnetism, such as the direction of voltage. What do you do for electricity? You get voltage, induce it or wire loop by changing current or the drag force of eddy currents exerted upon moving objects of a magnetic field. Alternating current. Tesla's laws. If a change in the magnetic field or current induces another electronic current, the direction is opposite that of the change. Currents bound inside the atoms of strong magnets can create counter-rotating currents in a copper or aluminum pipe. This is shown by dropping the magnet through the pipe. The descent of the magnet inside the pipe is observably slower than when dropped outside the pipe. That's what the demonstration we just saw. When a voltage is generated by a change in the magnetic flux, according to Faraday's law, the polarity of the induced voltage is such that it produces a current whose magnetic field opposes the change which produces it. The induced magnetic field inside any loop of wire always acts to keep the magnetic flux in the loop constant. Perpetual energy, folks. So this is the Bain generator built by 4C Bain, named after its inventor. It was presented in 1883 at the Southern Exposition by the Edison Company and used to produce electricity for the arc lamps that lit up the exposition. The Louisville Electric Company, the predecessor to the Gas and Electric, purchased the generator and used it to 1890 when alternating current and incandescent lamps made this direct current generator obsolete. But they had the lighting back then. They had the sources using Tartarian energy devices. So I wanted to take you through this film documentary. It was put out by the Tartary Empire by Awakened Truth, and it doesn't have a lot, only 466 views, but it's got some great research in here, and I screenshotted it and posted it on my Facebook, Fascist Book. It's about the Tartarians, the 15th century book on alchemical process and receipts. Tartarians were masters in chemistry, metallurgy, hydrology, architecture, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, agriculture, and as we're going to see, energy. In this civilization, architecture had the function of extracting properties of waves and resonances from the electromagnetic field to harmonize, to heal, to prolong life, and to increase the stature of men, plants, and animals. Isn't that cool? The high civilization of Tartarian extracted electromagnetic energy from the ether through the star fortress complexes with power stations, domes, towers, minarets, bridges, and obelisks, and used the very high thermal and electrical conductivity of copper. Copper has been mined since the beginning of human history. Venetians, or Phoenicians, definition means deaf Phoenicians, mined copper in the New World and Cornwall. Copper ingots used in the Middle East and Europe complex were mined and molten in facilities in the Americas. Power plants have metal hoops where the toroidal coil works. Perhaps the mass dumper of the Taipei Tower accumulates this function. Modern towers are already built with the domes themselves, and they're positioned below the pole that stands up to contact with the ether. A lookout can distract visitors' attention on the tower's true architectural significance. The original pyramids of Egypt and other places may have played an even more important role in electromagnetic energy production, and for this, they were the first to be neutralized. Another interesting website is from Humans Are Free, the pyramids of Giza, which we still can't figure out how they built them or what they were for. Were they energy devices? Were they the same type of design using the same type of, they used travertine, they used limestone, specific types of stone that had frequency devices. They were energetic frequencies. And here's a few gifts. You can see the energy devices being created from them. These devices, the solid gold plating, the limestone coating, the crystal housing, the waters below, collecting the sound waves from the wire, the ionization, the circuitry diagram of how the high energy frequencies of the pyramids were created. And the oscillators, the circuits used to oscillate the crystals back and forth. I'll put this in the show notes, but you could see how this could be possible, that the pyramids were energy devices as well. I'm sure there were many other things as well. Pretty amazing. Here we see more confirmation of flat Earth geocentrism. These ancient drawings showing the around Mount Meru energy device, and here's the device going up around the dome. Here's the coils underneath. Here's the flat disk. As I said, the oceans were the catalytic converter for the AC/DC for the battery, and these are ancient drawings that you see in many different places of design. I mean, the evidence is overwhelming that these domes were energy devices. We see them all around the world, folks. Isn't this incredible? It's just, we're not traveling to new places and seeing new things. We're seeing the same thing with a new set of eyes. Remember these pagodas you see? Energy devices. Tapping into the Earth's energy, just like satellite dishes. Why do satellite dishes point out on the horizon? Why aren't they pointing straight up? We see it over and over again. The tonality, the vibrations, universal energy vibrations. Same thing as our bodies. As above, so below. Skyscrapers are modern power plants and work in conjunction with metal structures of bridges whose iron is in contact with water and has spheres that may contain many coils and mercury in the upper part. The Empire State and the Manhattan Bridge were built by the Tartarians long before 1900. Just like the Tower Eiffel, by 1953, the invading parasites had built nothing in cities around the world. They just destroyed all the buildings erected until the 1950s, years belonging to the Tartarian civilization. It was only from the 1960 years that the poor and ugly building crates of the new civilization would begin to get erected. Can you say suburb? Photographs that purport to show the construction of this Empire State Building are false and nothing more than photo montages overlapping high-quality glass negatives with photos of some of the wood boards and false workers in the foregrounds. He shows some examples of that. Modern skyscrapers are modern powerhouses. When Tartarian plans to erect the Empire State Building began to be drawn, the goal was to capture enough energy to illuminate Lake Ontario, Vermont, Buffalo, Albany, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. This objective is registered on the aluminum plate in the hall of the building being built by the Tartary civilization. I'm not sure where this person gets this information, but it's fantastic. Buildings built by the Tartary around the world continue to draw the atmosphere energy to the invaders until today. Invaders copied old technology, such as the recent Las Vegas building, whose dome produces power to 4,000 apartments into a fountain with dancing waters synchronized with lights and music. Ether and electrical current is passed through the wire of the coil to generate a magnetic field, or conversely, an external time-varying magnetic field through the interior of the coil that generates an electromagnetic frequency voltage in the conductor. The magnetic field lines, green, of current carrying the loop of the wire are passed through the center of the loop, creating and concentrating a strong magnetic field there. Electromagnetic coils are used in electrical engineering in applications that interact with magnetic fields. The more turns of the wire, the stronger the field produced. All over the world, the technology of energy extraction through the atmosphere still works perfectly in castles, buildings, palaces, greenhouses, lighthouses, kiosks, fountains, mosques, fortresses, towers, bridges, and cathedrals that kept the old technological apparatus intact. In addition to details such as rose windows and Marconi's symbols of the vibration of electromagnetic energy, which acts as molecules and changes the behavior of the cells. Formerly, these waves could act in a healing levitation and transport, besides provoking feelings of like harmony and euphoria. This energy can now be used in another way, as we're seeing. The fake history called the Tartary architecture is Moorish revival or Moresque and Islamic, and also colonial, medieval, neoclassical, Baroque, Romanesque, Gothic, Beaux Arts, Eclectic, Tudor, Renaissance, Palladian, Richardson Romanesque, Chicago School, or Victorian. Let's add the Gilded Age in there as well. And label them as fashionable styles to hide the old and true function of its columns, arched openings, pinnacles, rose windows, naves ornamented with iron columns, towers, and domes. And labeled them as fashionable styles to hide the old and true function of its columns, its arched openings, its pinnacles, its rose windows. In addition to having to cut the ends of the pinnacles in the photographs or add crosses that did not exist before. How long have they had Photoshop, folks? Fantasies like was destroyed by fires, 1895, 1901, are written to hide the advanced and superior technology present in the constructions of the Tartaries long before. The building in Dresden, for example, is a huge Tartarian power station transformed into a mosque by gray men acting on behalf of the invading parasites. Even so, it still retains the red and white colors of the Tartary that designated the main functions of these. Tartary knew that the enemy was ruthless and terrible, and for this they protected their cities throughout the world with immense star fortresses and great walls. But it was defeated by energy weapons, dew, and waves of 300 meters of glacial waters that swept the continents and submerged the fortresses. Can you say mud flood? The architecture of the Tartary used the red color of bricks and clear stripes to design power stations and associated structures like the station of St. Pancras in London, which belonged to the civilization of Tartary by which it was built. In some regions, they could also be striped in black, green, and brown, and have a bronze griffin on the roof, the animal symbol of Tartary. All Tartary power stations, small and large, had pipe organs to harmonize and heal the population through sound waves. What is now known as the somatics. For this reason, they immediately passed into the hands of the invader parasites after the defeat of the Tartary, and so the Presbyterian, Catholic, Anglican, synagogue, mosques, temples, and churches were born. And here are some of the magnificently and elegantly and massive organs that were in place. This is at the San Francisco 1950 exhibition. Look at how this gentleman here, look at how massive these are. These were healing frequencies they used to heal and help humanity, help animals, help plants in helping them heal. Look at these organs. Beautiful. 1915, same year as the San Francisco. San Diego hosted the same with these magnificent pipes in the cathedrals. Can you imagine what they sound like? Can you imagine what good vibes they give off? Talking about good vibrations, folks. Look at that. Isn't that magnificent? Could we build those today? I mean, what kind of designs would you have to get? What kind of craftsmen would you have to get to put these? And here we have the magnetron. Here we have the cells from the stained glass windows. I mean, this is just truly elegant and magnificent and beautiful. Look at the keyboards, man. What a sound station. All around the world. I might also say that the churches could say when people came into their churches, they always felt better. That's because they were healing centers. But they said, oh, it's God working through you in the church. No, it was the design of the buildings and the copper and the Tartarian design. The enemy also interrupted the astronomical clocks of the Tartary because they used the geocentric model, flat Earth, to represent the solar system in the Tartarian astronomical clocks. The Earth was at the center of the solar system, geocentric. These clocks were complex calculating machines. They used them like computers, and to operate them, sophisticated mechanical knowledge was required to the invaders, who invented the heliocentric model and the Copernicus character. Among many others, to be able to recreate the history of humanity and erase traces of their recent crimes and destruction of the great civilization of Tartary. Throughout the world, invading forces that defeated Tartary appropriated their palaces and red power stations and turned it into universities, museums, theaters, banks, prefectures, chambers of commerce, stock exchange, churches, high school courts, banks, post office, libraries, opera theaters, biomedical research institute, casinos, and tourist attractions, as well as cathedrals, synagogues, and churches. Asia, Africa, Europe, Oceania, and the Americas were part of a single high civilization and had the architecture focused on the extraction of electromagnetic energy. This is attested by the Gothic towers, Hindu and Chinese pagodas of the 11th century, and the African clay mosque, the Presbyterian church in Buffalo. The pinnacle studded with metal staples, the 11th century complex of Zamora. The Cantaju 9 spires of the Lingao roofs, design whose drawings are perfectly reproduced in the contemporary Yin Mao Tower in Shanghai. In the park, there's a rare carillon installed at 42 meters high, which houses 68 bells of 48 tons and is fourth in the world in the number of bells. Concerts in the park with a historic carillon take place every Sunday at 3 p.m. from September through the vibration of bronze associated with the ethereal electromagnetic current, which has a high harmonizing and healing power. The carillon history dates back to the first kings of Prussia. Here we are again. With the defeat of Tartary and the creation of Germany, the palace was demolished and the Reichstag was erected by the will of the character Bismarck. Remember the Reichstag fires? That was supposedly starting off the World War II. Tiergarten may have been a magnificent Noah's Ark endowed with atmospheric energy where all species were classified to be saved. Tiergarten may have been a magnificent... Oh, we just did that. The building surrounded by 8 minarets, which Janie photographed in the Tiergarten, and to which she ascribes to the secret of such happiness, continued to secretly store atmospheric energy produced by the Victory Column associated with the Reichstag dome. And what happens today in the Central Park of Berlin for the benefit of humans and animals was carried out in the past throughout the world from the beginning of our real history. Pretty interesting stuff. I don't know where they get the material. They didn't source it. Very interesting story, though. And again, you can get this in the show notes, and it's from Awakened Truth from December 7th, 2018. And here's from my Facebook page. This is a great website, stolenhistory.org. You can go for days on this site. Talks about the mud floods. The once Byzantines retook Constantinople in 1261. The Sardis with the entire Asia Minor. The Castor Valleys and the fortress citadels of Sardis was handed over to them by 1306. Remember the revisionist history now by the Fomenko history, science, or fiction. The Russian mathematicians have pretty clearly shown that history, real true history, doesn't begin till our dates of 1200. But here you can clearly see there was some flooding going on. And this is the ruins of Philadelphia. This is part of Sardis, where Sardis is. And these temples that were massive, how did they build them? Well, they were built and then there was floods. There was mud floods. Were these caused by directed energy weapons or these earthquakes that liquefied? That's some of the conjecture going on. But look at these massive stones, folks. How did they move them? How did they do this? They had advanced technology that's being hidden from us. No doubt. And you think this guy with a shovel is able to dig all this stuff out? I don't think so. See, they all kind of got a shovel in their hand? I mean, they've been photoshopping these pictures for a long, long time, but the evidence is pretty overwhelming. And here again, we see the domes being used by energy devices. This is Weidencliff, Long Island, that J.P. Morgan destroyed because Tesla was tapping into free energy. Notice the shape of the dome. These are like the Nazi bell that Victor Schauberger worked on, the free energy devices, the water wizard, and these were also energy devices. The Vimana, the ancient Vedics, they had it. They had flying craft back then. Why is the Apollo module? Just put that one together. But look at these sites. I mean, they're all based in the same shapes. They're energy devices. They were all used to create energy. As I covered in one of my previous videos, here's the dome with the magnetrons in them with the copper bronze sheathing that created the electromagnetic frequencies for the energy power deriving. And here you can see the same. You see your local power systems. Your local power systems are based on the same ancient technology. They've just concentrated it down. And we see the same type of design over and over around the world. I mean, these were energy centers. The evidence is now just overwhelming looking at all this with a new set of eyes. We can see the designs and the shapes make them conduits for energy. So they were healing centers. They were energy productions. They were trying to help people. They even had energy connected to water to the ships. And they could sail ships and light ships. And that's how they crossed oceans, perpetual energy, directing it from the ether, using it on the ships, conducting through the water, and able to sail great distances. Now we know. We now know how they were able to cross great distances of water way back then. They were able to harness the energy. Look at the flames coming. They used the ether to conduct. Here's old coins that showed the sprites that used energy as well, the magnetrons. These are sprites today, taken, the same ones. We didn't know what they were, but we know what they are now, today. This ancient technology has been hidden from us. But now that we're looking with a new set of eyes, we see the directed energy, the free energy is everywhere. I mean, look at how tall these buildings were. Horse and buggies, folks. Look at these. How did they put the statues up there? I mean, we have helicopters pulling them off of Notre Dame now. What did they use back in? They were using energy devices, and they buried it with the Tartarians when they took them over. Incredible. And here's some other ancient energy devices, and you see the electric thunderbolts. And these were found all over the world. You see them in Egypt, see them in the Middle East holding these. And what are they? Maitreya the Christ, the Vajras, the Metatron, the Christ sacred geometric Vajra for meditation and self-healing. Self-hold them in your hands. I mean, the ancients were all about healing and making the world better that we found all over throughout history. Why aren't we presented with these healing objects today, folks? Why aren't we allowed to heal ourselves? That's another great thing about the biomagnetics and biomagnetism. It's self-healing through subtle energy, universal energy healing. Notice the crystals in the middle, and then they have copper wires that are running throughout. And here we see the vibrational discharges in the plasma chambers of these devices here, which show the frequencies that they operate at once they evolve into their energetic states. I mean, this is the fleur-de-lis. Recognize in New Orleans the fleur-de-lis? That's what this is about. And you can see here in the middle of this picture, there's a crystal, and there's the copper wiring around with gold, all conductive. Beautiful, isn't it? Look, Thunderbolt, you see here Brad Pitt paying Thor, who brought the dome, tried to put a hammer through the dome and whatnot. But the book, Thunderbolt of the Gods, is a must-read if you want to understand this better. And the Thunderbolts of the Gods. And here you can see the plasma field right here. And the book, David Talbot and Wallace Thornhill have done a wonderful work speaking about this same thing. And it's in the hand of Thor here. It's the Vajra, which we were just talking about here. Interesting, huh? And here you can see it used again, and they're saying it could be used as an ancient weapon as well. And here you see him with the weapon in his hand. But we have case after case, pictures after pictures of the Vajra devices. And again, here we see it's ancient technology denied us. 1909, they had an electric car that could get 1,244 miles on one charge. Tesla's gets 408 miles on one charge. And here are patents from 1864. Directed energy weapons are being used back then. They're making patents for the electromagnetic railgun. More and more evidence. And we briefly mentioned star forts and star castles, but we need to take a look at these designs. I was not aware until it was brought up looking into the Tartarian civilization, the great Tartarian civilization, that these star forts are all around the world. We see them in France. We see them designed from, they're saying, from the 1500s, the 1700s. Their story is that they were a new line of defense where they had moats that protected it, but that's not a design of a moat. We've got some more pictures down here. What is it about the star design? Well, think of a crystal. What are crystals? They're star designs, folks. And look at these designs. I mean, this wasn't built to protect. You don't have all these designs coming in and out. Water, again, is conductivity. These were energy, self-contained energy devices based on the water. Now, you could say that was a fort that protected people from in their castles, but at ground level and whatnot, we're seeing all around that these star shapes were induced, and no doubt that they were energy centers with all these waterways around them in a very specific design in order to generate frequency, in order to generate energy, in order to protect themselves. Could they electrify the moats? Could they electrify the walls to keep people from coming in with these star designs? I mean, this is just a few of them, but if you Google star forts, you're going to see hundreds and hundreds of these designs. All right, so that's all I've got for today. Coming up, Vision 2020. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, but in the darkness, one mind holding a candle is a target. We all must raise our consciousness, give others eyes to see, the dome and whatnot. So in this great age of great awakening and great discovery, we're learning that the ancients had healing protocols through their technology. They had free energy for everyone. There was abundance. They lived in the land of plenty. They gave back to nature more than they took. We can learn from them now. We're learning what our ancient ancestors lived in, a benevolent, loving society, not a society built on war, conquest, and capitalism. All right, hopefully this helped you a little bit. Plain truth out. Be the power you wish to see, folks. Tag, you're it. And love one another always. Peace.